Everybody, welcome back to SEC Roundup. I'm Nick Morgan. I'm the founder of ICAN, the Investor Choice Advocates Network, and the co-host of this podcast. With me is the co-founder and co-host, Tom Zucchero. Tom, how are you doing?
I'm well, Nick. Good morning.
I'm doing well, too, because we are doing our second annual pop culture episode of SEC Roundup. So for that occasion, we are joined again by Patrick Hunnius, the General Counsel and Chief Compliance Officer of Silver Rock Financial. Patrick, great to see you.
Hey, good to be here. Thanks, Nick. Thanks, Tom.
We rely on you to be our pop culture barometer. And here, given the timing, it's been about a year since we did our last one. The timing is good because we are in the middle of an important cultural event and legal event, and that is the trial of FTX founder Sam Bankman-Fried, which is going on as we speak. The pop culture aspect of it is, of course, there are two books out, both of which Patrick has read, so we're going to rely on him to be our critique of the books. Going Infinite by Michael Lewis and Number Go Up by Zeke Foe. And both of those talk about the founder of FTX, Sam Bankman-Fried, who, as I said, is on trial at the moment in a criminal fraud case. Tom, we're going to talk about how the books depict Sam Bankman-Fried, the defendant in the case. But before we get into that, since this is a sort of legal podcast, talk about the importance of SBF's state of mind, his intent, and how that feeds into his decision to testify, which I'll just note, he is testifying as we're recording this. So this is a real-time critique. But tell us about why he might have decided to testify and how that relates to his mental state.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. I mean, look, intent is a critical element of the crimes that he's been charged with. Normally, if you have no other defense as to either the falsity of the statements or materiality, you are left with an intent defense, and it's the defendant's state of mind, and it could be an effective defense if he can demonstrate that he didn't intend to commit criminal fraud. He may either attribute his conduct to mere negligence or oversights or reliance on professionals. But in this case, it's probably a Hail Mary. The fact that he's testifying in the first place, it's very unusual, particularly in a case of this magnitude, for a defendant in a criminal case to testify. One wrong answer, one mistake, or even giving a negative impression to the jury is enough to send you away to prison for decades. So it's an enormous risk, enormous Hail Mary. Of course, none of us have been in the courtroom, so we don't know the strength of the evidence against him, but he's got to believe he's facing a conviction, and that's why he's taking the enormous risk of testifying.
Well, I guess we'll find out what's going to happen pretty quickly here, since the defense has started its case and he's on the stand. But let's turn back to the books for a second. So we've got these two books, Patrick, Number Go Up and Going Infinite. What did you think of the books generally before we talk about how they might reflect on the trial?
Yeah, sure. I had an interesting experience reading because I read them not intentionally back to back. I read them in probably the course of about 5 days. I read Never Go Up first, Going Infinite second, and Number Go. They both cover SBF, but they do have different focuses. That Number Go Up is more of a survey of crypto generally. SBF definitely plays a large part in it. Michael Lewis is actually in the book for a brief moment, and there's an intersection there. And then Going Infinite, obviously everybody knows, or presumably knows, that Michael Lewis had amazing sort of embedded access to SBF in the last year of FTX, including during his house arrest and that one. So Number Go Up is a great read. It's very broad. It's very funny. it's also very sobering. There's one whole section about people who are effectively prisoned to play games and make in-game assets that are sold for money. That is a large section of the book, and there's also things about crypto and money laundering and funding terrorism and the like. And so it's not all fun and games by any means, but it's a very, very good book. Going Infinite is, I'd say 55% of it is exactly what you would expect a Michael Lewis book to be. There's a unique person with a unique way of doing something, or a unique way of seeing something, triumphing over adversity or people who think differently and the like. And then it pivots into something that's just, to my mind, super, super bizarre, which is, it's, I see all this weirdness, and this guy's just so weird that, and to your point, Tom, it's all like it's Sam. At the end of the day, it's just Sam. He couldn't be bothered to know where money was, or what rules were, or where custody was, or whether there were controls on leverage or borrowing. Hey, it's just Sam. And that's like the last third of the book is and then after the book is published, he has said it is a quote letter to the jury. That's what he wants the book to be. And so I guess it's you can't convict this guy because he's such a bonehead or he's so in the clouds. I guess that's the idea. But it also has just weird factual assertions, like he goes through Sam's I don't want to go too much into the weeds, but there's this whole thing about spreadsheets, right? It's come out in the trial. It came out in the interviews that he did as FTX was winding down the drain, about spreadsheets and where was the money. And Michael Lewis in the book claims, this $8 billion shortfall that everybody's focused on does not exist. He comes out and says there is no money missing, which the trial, like the forensic accountant who testified last week, says that's not true. The 7 spreadsheets say that's not true. And it's just super bizarre. Like, I don't understand it. Whatever, he was there and he has more access than I do. But anyway, my takeaway from the book was all the right facts, all the wrong conclusions, was seemingly what, and it's just super frustrating. And you're like, why? Why does, you almost want to shake. It's the first time I've wanted to shake an author by the lapels quite some time. And the last thing I'll say is the biggest single surprise in the book is in the acknowledgments. He thanks people for reading it. And I was like, you didn't just write this alone and not have anybody look over your shoulder. You did have the opportunity for somebody to say, are you sure about that? And so that was quite a surprise, because I thought this was written in a vacuum. Or anyway, that's my take on the 2 books.
So from Patrick, the book reviewer, if you had limited time and only wanted to read one of these books, which one would you recommend?
Number Go Up, 100%. 100%.
And then tying it back into Tom's comments about intent and why is Sam Bankman-Fried testifying, and the fact that Michael Lewis characterizes his book as a letter to the jury. I'm going to ask you both this question. So you read the book, Patrick. Let's say you were on the jury, and I realize I'm asking this question at some peril, because by the time this gets posted, the verdict will probably be back. Were you persuaded? And if you were on the jury, would you convict, or would you acquit, or something else?
Actually, let me add one other thing about Number Go Up. Like, both books, only one book truly talks about the state of mind of SBF, and that's Going Infinite for sure. And Michael definitely seems to, he thinks he's just sort of checked out, or he can't even form an intent because he doesn't know enough. That's sort of the thrust. Although there is an aside in the book where after the failure, people at FTX bring him aside and tell him things about SBF's knowledge of this and that, and Michael either discounts it or doesn't seem to see the significance of what he's written in the book. The one thing I'll add on Number Go Up, it doesn't talk about his state of mind, but it does talk about sort of the industry. And he goes to these conferences where people describe crypto product after crypto product as, and I'm going to quote, this is a never-ending Ponzi scheme, says one promoter. This is what I call Ponzi-nomics. And they're not saying this is bad. They're saying that is good. That is a characteristic that is promotable and worthy. And so you get this idea, in Number Go Up, you get this idea of the whole thing's a scam. right? Whether it's FTX or something else. And I don't want to put my finger too much on the thumb of, I think all crypto is a scam. I'm definitely a skeptic, but it colors it to some extent. Anyway, your real question, am I convinced by the book? No, I'm not. To the extent I followed the trial, I think he's got an uphill battle in his testimony.
That sounds like you think it'll be a conviction, but that will
I think he'll be convicted, and I think next week is going to be very, very rough for him.
Yeah.
I think this is a person who's used to answering questions in a forum that he has picked and not in a courtroom where he has to answer the precise question.
Right. Tom, same question to you. You've prosecuted people for fraud. You have defended people at trial with fraud claims against them. Would care to make a prediction? Will the jury convict? Will the jury acquit? Will the jury hang? What do you think?
All right, first I'll qualify it in case I'm wrong. We're not in the courtroom. We don't see and hear the witnesses. We don't assess their credibility. We're just reading news reports. Having said all that, I think he's going to get convicted. These cases, we know from Enron, we know from Madoff, and all these big frauds which have occurred over the last decades, defendants don't win these cases. And Sam Bankman-Fried must understand that, which is why he and his lawyers decided he should testify, which I think is unusual in a criminal case. I think in a case like this can only be viewed as I said earlier, a Hail Mary to try to respond to some of the really damaging testimony which has been given in this trial so far.
All right, well, there you have it. And I'll join in. My prediction is also that the jury will convict. By the time this gets posted, we'll know the truth, and people can assess for themselves whether we were right or wrong. In the meantime, Patrick, thanks so much for reading the book, sharing your books, and sharing your thoughts on both. I think I'll take your advice and go get number go up. And thank you both. And for everyone else, we'll see you on the next SEC Roundup. Bye until then.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you both.